There's something about Borderlands that's always felt like home to me. Ever since the first time I set foot on Pandora back in 2009, I've been hooked on the series' unique blend of loot-driven chaos, over-the-top humor, and a world that constantly swings between ridiculous and oddly heartfelt. Borderlands 2 in particular cemented my love, giving us unforgettable characters like Handsome Jack and a vault-hunting adventure that to this day stands as one of my all-time favorite gaming experiences. So when Borderlands 3 finally arrived 7 years after the last numbered entry, I was more than ready to dive back into the mayhem. And let me be clear right away, as a fan, I had a blast. There's no denying the thrill of pulling the trigger on a ridiculous new weapon, watching enemies burst into showers of loot, and hearing Claptrap's nonsensical rambling fill the air. Borderlands 3 delivers on those core pleasures. It's still very much the franchise we know and love, with guns that feel better than ever, a galaxy-spanning story that ups the scale, and a roster of both fresh and returning characters to keep you company. But at the same time, it's not perfect. The narrative, while ambitious, often stumbles. Some characters don't land as well as they should, and certain gameplay decisions, while bold, aren't always as smooth in execution. As a superfan, I wanted to love every moment, but I also have to be honest when something didn't quite hit the same high notes as the series' best moments. That's why, at the end of my journey, Borderlands 3 lands as a great game, packed with highlights, but one that also shows cracks that keep it from reaching legendary status. And that's the perspective I'll take throughout this review. As a long-time fan who loves this series, who appreciates what Borderlands 3 gets right, and who's willing to admit where it doesn't quite hit the bullseye. So let's load up, lock in, and talk about what makes this third outing both an exhilarating ride and a slightly uneven one. If you've been around the Borderlands block as long as I have, you know that the gunplay has always been fun, but never necessarily the star of the show. In Borderlands 1 and 2, the hook was the loot system, the comedy, and the characters. Don't get me wrong, shooting felt good, but compared to other big-name shooters of their time, the mechanics could feel stiff. The guns were wild in terms of stats and effects, but they didn't always feel as different in your hands as the game wanted you to believe. Borderlands 3 is the first time the series truly nailed that marriage between bazillions of guns as a marketing slogan and guns that actually feel like they come from different universes. The evolution here is massive, and as a fan, I found myself in awe at just how much better everything clicked. The first thing you notice is the weight and responsiveness of the weapons. Every trigger pull feels tighter, every reload snappier. Gearbox clearly puts serious effort into modernizing the feel of combat. Running and gunning across Pandora and beyond has never felt this fluid, and once I got used to the movement speed and slide mechanics, it felt like I was playing a whole new kind of Borderlands. Suddenly strafing around enemies with a Malawan SMG or sliding into cover with a Jacobs revolver felt natural, almost instinctive. But what truly sets Borderlands 3 apart is the manufacturer identity. In previous games, you could kind of tell the difference between brands. A TDRA gun would explode when reloaded, Hyperion weapons would get more accurate the longer you fired, and Malawan leaned heavily into elemental damage. But here, every single brand has a personality, a rhythm, and a playstyle all its own. It's not just stats on a screen anymore, it's a visceral difference you can feel. Take Jacobs, for example. They've always been about old school firepower, revolvers, lever action rifles, shotguns that kick like a mule. In Borderlands 3, Gearbox cranked up the fantasy. Every critical hit, you land ricochets bullets into nearby enemies, turning a simple revolver into a chain reaction death machine. I'll never forget the first time I nailed 3 crits in a row with a Jacobs pistol and watched an entire mob of bandits drop like dominoes. It was the kind of gunplay moment you remember, long after logging off. Then there's TDRA, which has completely redefined itself. Instead of the simple, throw your gun like a grenade gimmick from past games in Borderlands 3, reloading a TDR weapon turns it into a mini drone, a bouncing bomb, or even a walking gun with little legs that scurries after enemies. It's hilarious, it's practical, and it never gets old. Suddenly you're making tactical choices in the middle of a firefight. Do you keep firing, or do you toss the weapon and let your gun finish the job for you? Malawan might have the biggest glow up. Their reputation for elemental weapons has been carried over, but now they come with alternate fire modes, often letting you swap between 2 different elements on the same gun. A pistol that lets you flip between corrosive and cryo, a sniper rifle that can ignite 1 second and electrocute the next. It's not just cool, it's genuinely strategic. Enemy shields, armor, and resistances suddenly matter way more because you're equipped to deal with them on the fly. Atlas enters the fray for the first time as a proper manufacturer, and their gimmick is one of the slickest in the game. Atlas guns fire tracking darts that tag enemies, and then your homing bullets follow up with pinpoint precision. It makes you feel like a sci-fi super soldier, effortlessly locking onto targets and melting them before they even know what's happening. I could go on and on. Hyperion guns with built-in shields that give you cover mid-fight, Vladoff weapons with underbarrel rocket launchers or minigun modes, COV, Children of the Vault, guns with infinite ammo that overheat instead of reload. Each one feels like its own toy box, and the sheer creativity Gearbox put into making them distinct has to be one of Borderlands 3's crowning achievements. And the cherry on top, legendary weapons. This game has some of the wildest, most over-the-top legendaries I've ever seen in the series. From guns that shoot cheeseburgers to rifles that summon volcanoes, it feels like Gearbox gave their designers free rein to get as ridiculous as possible, and it works. The joy of finding a new legendary in Borderlands 3 is unmatched, not just because of the power boost, but because you know it's going to do something you've never seen before. For a fan like me, the evolution of the weapons alone is enough to justify this sequel. Even when the story dragged, even when a character didn't click, I kept coming back because every fight felt like a new experiment with firepower. The guns aren't just tools in Borderlands 3, they're the heart of the experience. You've got the goofy, self-aware humor that doesn't take itself too seriously. On the other, you've got surprisingly heavy character arcs, tragic losses, and big stakes. Borderlands 2 nailed this balance with Handsome Jack, a villain so charismatic and layered that he carried the entire narrative on his back. Going into Borderlands 3, the big question for me was, could Gearbox deliver another story that lived up to that legacy? The answer, for me, is sort of. The game wastes no time in setting the stage. You're a brand new Vault Hunter recruited by Lilith, who's now leading the Crimson Raiders after Roland's death. Pandora is still a lawless wasteland, but there's a bigger problem on the horizon. The Calypso twins, Troy and Tyreen. They're essentially live-streaming cult leaders who've united the bandit clans under the Children of the Vault. Their mission? Open every vault in the galaxy and drain the power within to fuel Tyreen's status as a living god. On paper, this is an awesome setup. Moving beyond Pandora, exploring multiple planets and facing enemies who weaponize fame and manipulation, it felt fresh, ambitious, and very fitting for a 2019 release in a world dominated by streamers and influencers. Let's get to the heart of the matter. The villains. Tyreen and Troy are, without question, divisive. As a fan, I didn't expect another Handsome Jack. Lightning like that rarely strikes twice, but I was curious to see how Gearbox would differentiate them. Tyreen, in particular, has moments where she shines. Her arrogance, her god complex, her constant need for validation. It's all very deliberate, and it works in bursts. The idea of a villain who feeds off attention, literally and figuratively, is clever, and when she flexes her siren powers, she feels genuinely threatening. But here's the problem. The writing doesn't always give her the weight she deserves. Too often, the twins lean into being annoying rather than menacing. The humor sometimes undercuts the danger, and while Handsome Jack balanced cruelty with charisma, the twins can come off as bratty streamers who you just want to mute. That said, I will give Gearbox credit. In the late game, Tyreen does evolve into a more intimidating figure. The final confrontation with her feels suitably epic, and her transformation into a godlike siren monster is a visual spectacle. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that the villains never fully lived up to their potential. One of the joys of being a fan is seeing old faces return, and Borderlands 3 is loaded with them. Lilith, Tannis, Claptrap, Ellie, Reese, Zero, the gang's all here. For me, the highlight was seeing how these characters had grown, or hadn't, since Borderlands 2. Lilith is front and center, carrying the weight of leadership after Roland's death. Her arc is actually one of the strongest in the game, and her final sacrifice hits hard. As someone who's followed her since day one, it was bittersweet, but fitting. Tannis gets some of the best character moments. Her awkwardness is dialed up, but she's also given a surprisingly heroic arc involving her siren powers. Claptrap, well, he's still Claptrap. Love him or hate him, he brings comic relief in spades. I personally still laugh at his ridiculous antics, though I know some fans are tired of him. Reese from Tales from the Borderlands makes a triumphant return, and as someone who loved that spin-off, I was thrilled. His mustache subplot is silly, but it's also exactly the kind of side joke I expect from this series. Seeing these characters together felt like catching up with old friends. It gave the story a nostalgic warmth, even when the main plot stumbled. On the flip side, the new characters are a mixed bag. Ava in particular is controversial. She's a young siren in training who spends most of the story being brash and reckless. For me, she came across as underdeveloped, and her eventual rise to leadership of the Crimson Raiders didn't feel earned. As a fan, it stung, especially when other, more beloved characters had more natural arcs. Lorelei, the caffeine-fueled freedom fighter on Promethea, is a standout. She's tough, funny, and has one of the most relatable obsessions in the game: coffee. Her presence gave Promethea's story weight and humor at the same time. Wainwright Jacobs and Sir Hammerlock's romance is one of the most wholesome parts of the game. As a fan who always enjoyed Hammerlock's dry wit, seeing him find happiness was a joy. The problem is that some of these new characters outshine the main villains. Ava takes up too much space, while Lorelei and Wainwright, who could have had bigger roles, feel underutilized. If there's one thing Borderlands 3 does right, it's reminding you that beneath the fart jokes and meme humor, this series has heart. The death of Maya is one of the most gut-punching moments in the entire franchise. Watching her sacrifice herself for Ava is both heroic and tragic, and it genuinely floored me the first time I played. As someone who loved running Maya in Borderlands 2, losing her hurt, and it gave the story stakes in a way the villains sometimes failed to. The ending too lands on a surprisingly emotional note. Lilith's sacrifice to stop Tyreen and protect Pandora is a fitting conclusion for her arc. Seeing her symbol, the Firehawk, burn across the sky gave me chills. It reminded me that beneath all the chaos, this is a story about legacy, sacrifice, and the bonds between Vault Hunters. For all its highs though, the narrative isn't airtight. The pacing can be uneven, dragging in the middle sections. The Calypso twins, while clever in concept, never fully cement themselves as iconic villains. And the humor, a series staple, sometimes swings and misses. When it hits, it's hilarious. When it doesn't, it feels forced. As a fan, I can forgive a lot because the heart of the story is still there, and the emotional beats work. But I'd be lying if I said the writing lived up to the brilliance of Borderlands 2. The story of Borderlands 3 is ambitious, heartfelt, and occasionally brilliant, but also inconsistent. It gives us some unforgettable moments, Maya's death, Lilith's sacrifice, while struggling with weaker villains and uneven pacing. For me, it was enough to stay invested, but it didn't quite reach the storytelling heights I hoped for. One of the biggest criticisms of the earlier Borderlands games, and particularly the first one, was how flat the boss fights could feel. You'd basically be shooting giant bullet sponges until they dropped loot, with very little in the way of spectacle or mechanical creativity. Borderlands 2 improved this dramatically, giving us memorable bosses like Wilhelm, the Bunker, and of course, Handsome Jack's climactic showdown. But it also leaned too heavily on repeating the formula of massive health pool plus mobs equals difficulty. Borderlands 3 aimed to fix this. It's clear from the start that Gearbox wanted boss fights to feel more cinematic, more dynamic, and more in tune with modern action shooters. Did they succeed? For the most part, yes. Bosses in this game are bigger, flashier, and more mechanically varied than ever before, though not all of them land equally. One of the biggest criticisms of the earlier Borderlands games, particularly the first one, was how flat the boss fights could feel. You'd basically be shooting giant bullet sponges until they dropped loot, with very little in the way of spectacle or mechanical creativity. Borderlands 2 improved this dramatically, giving us memorable bosses like Wilhelm, the Bunker, and of course, Handsome Jack's climactic showdown. But it also leaned too heavily on repeating the formula of massive health pool plus mobs equals difficulty. Borderlands 3 aimed to fix this. It's clear from the start that Gearbox wanted boss fights to feel more cinematic, more dynamic, and more in tune with modern action shooters. Did they succeed? For the most part, yes. Bosses in this game are bigger, flashier, and more mechanically varied than ever before, though not all of them land equally. As a longtime fan, I couldn't help but notice how far Gearbox has come since the days of Borderlands 1's stand still and shoot at a giant crab. Boss fights in 3 feel modern, cinematic, and alive. Yes, some fall into bullet sponge territory, but others, Troy, Gravewood, Warden, are some of the best in the series. And enemy variety? It's the best it's ever been. Every new planet felt like an adventure, partly because I didn't know what kind of enemies I'd be facing. That sense of discovery is exactly what keeps me replaying Borderlands 3 years later. One of the things that gives Borderlands 3 so much personality is its hub ship, Sanctuary 3. It's not just a menu disguised as a location, it's a living, breathing space full of oddballs, fan favorite characters, and enough quirks to make every visit feel worthwhile. Sanctuary 3 is a beat-up junker of a spaceship, and that's exactly why I love it. It feels like a character in its own right. You've got mismatched hallways, neon-soaked corners, and that signature Borderlands mix of grime and charm. The design is a step up from Sanctuary in Borderlands 2, which was essentially a town with static NPCs. Here you're aboard a vessel that actually moves, ferrying you between planets. That sense of travel gives the game a larger scope. You're not just wandering Pandora again, you're hopping between worlds. Even better, the ship changes as the story progresses. New characters come aboard, rooms unlock, and your crew evolves. Every time I fast traveled back, I'd check each room just to see if something had changed. For me, Sanctuary 3 is more than just a base. It's a symbol of how far the series has come. In Borderlands 1, your hub was basically New Haven. In 2, it was Sanctuary, a grounded city on Pandora. Now, it's a spaceship, giving you access to the galaxy. That escalation mirrors the series' ambition. What makes Sanctuary 3 special is how it balances nostalgia and new blood. Old favorites anchor it, while the new faces like Wainwright, Ellie, and Balex give it fresh life. It's chaotic, messy, and ridiculous, just like the Vault Hunters who call it home. This is the big one. Borderlands 3 introduces loot instancing, and it's a godsend. In the old games, loot was shared, meaning if 4 of you were playing, you had to fight over who got what. Legendary drops could cause actual arguments, and maybe even a few broken friendships. Now, every player sees their own loot. If a legendary drops for you, it's yours. Period. No more racing to grab loot before your buddy. No more awkward bartering over who deserves the good gun. It's a small change on paper, but in practice it makes co-op infinitely more enjoyable. You can still turn on classic mode to share loot if you want that old school vibe, but instancing is the standard, and I wouldn't go back. Another huge improvement is level scaling. In Borderlands 2, playing co-op could be rough if your party wasn't balanced. If your friend was 10 levels ahead, enemies would melt under their guns while you barely scratched them. Or worse, if you were over-leveled, everything felt like paper targets. Borderlands 3 fixes this with dynamic scaling. Enemies, loot, and XP adjust to your level individually. That means a level 10 player and a level 30 player can team up, and both will feel challenged. Both will earn meaningful rewards. As a superfan, this was mind-blowing the first time I tested it. It makes co-op so much more accessible. You don't need to schedule strict no playing without the squad rules anymore. You can drop in, help a buddy, and still progress meaningfully. Another huge improvement is level scaling. In Borderlands 2, playing co-op could be rough if your party wasn't balanced. If your friend was 10 levels ahead, enemies would melt under their guns while you barely scratched them. Or worse, if you were over-leveled, everything felt like paper targets. Borderlands 3 fixes this with dynamic scaling. Enemies, loot, and XP adjust to your level individually. That means a level 10 player and a level 30 player can team up, and both will feel challenged. Both will earn meaningful rewards. As a superfan, this was mind-blowing the first time I tested it. It makes co-op so much more accessible. You don't need to schedule strict no playing without the squad rules anymore. You can drop in, help a buddy, and still progress meaningfully. This is where things get spicy. Mayhem mode, the endgame difficulty scaling system, is pure insanity with friends. Picture this. 4 Vault Hunters in Mayhem 10, modifiers stacked against us trying to push through mobs that heal when you reload or explode into elemental novas on death. It's absolute chaos. Enemies are tougher, but the loot is juicier and the laughter never stops. In co-op, Mayhem mode feels like a raid light. You're calling out targets, reviving each other constantly, and trying to out-DPS the modifiers. It's the perfect recipe for that one more run addiction. As someone who's sunk hundreds of hours into this series, I can confidently say Borderlands 3 has the best co-op experience yet. Loot instancing alone eliminates 90% of the friction from earlier games, and level scaling makes it possible for anyone to jump in at any time. The end result? Pure, unfiltered fun. Whether you're grinding Mayhem 11 with a squad of veterans or just helping a new friend through the first missions, co-op in Borderlands 3 captures everything that makes this series special: chaos, laughter, and a never-ending shower of guns. It's not just a feature, it's the core of the experience. One of the things I've always loved about Borderlands is that finishing the main story doesn't mean the fun stops. 3 leans hard into this, giving players a variety of ways to keep grinding, hunting legendaries, and testing their Vault Hunter builds. For longtime fans, the endgame content feels like a playground of chaos, loot, and experimentation. Proving Grounds, introduced for solo and co-op play. These are timed combat arenas designed to push your skills and weapons to the limit. Each run has different waves of enemies and environmental hazards. Completing them efficiently rewards iridium, unique loot, and bragging rights. It's all about precision, skill, and endurance. Circle of Slaughter. This is pure, unadulterated arena fun. Wave after wave of enemies with escalating difficulty, sometimes ending with mini-bosses or elite variants. The Circle is where weapon experimentation shines. You can see which guns, mods, and elemental combos are truly broken under pressure. Both modes give players a reason to keep revisiting planets, testing strategies, and chasing rare drops. Gearbox added vault cards and seasonal content to keep things fresh. These time challenges tweak the world, add unique modifiers, and reward players with exclusive cosmetics, weapons, and skins. This system encourages replayability without forcing players to grind endlessly. Fans like me love it, because it keeps the game feeling alive, even months after release. New gear drops, new strategies, and new chaos await with every seasonal update. Legendary hunts, bosses, and mini-bosses drop unique guns. Hunting them is a game in itself. Who drops what, under what conditions, and will RNG bless you? Build experimentation. Endgame encourages trying out new builds. Moses Iron Bear tanking, Zane's double clones, FL4K's Pet Swarm. Mayhem mode gives you a playground to see which combinations are overpowered, which are hilariously inefficient, and which are just absurdly fun. Endgame in Borderlands 3 isn't just about repetition, it's about discovery, finding a gun with perfect stats, comboing abilities in unexpected ways, or exploiting Mayhem modifiers to the extreme feels like a reward all on its own. Mayhem mode isn't just a challenge, it's a way to experiment with crazy builds. Running a full elemental-focused party in Mayhem 7 can result in explosions, fire, and shock effects that look like a pyrotechnics show. It's chaotic, hilarious, and deeply satisfying. Borderlands 3 isn't a game you finish, it's a game you live in. There's always another gun to chase, another boss to farm, or another ridiculous side quest to complete. As someone who's obsessed with weapon variety, builds, and chaos, the endgame content in Borderlands 3 is brilliant. It doesn't just extend playtime, it enhances the core experience. The combination of mayhem mode, arenas, seasonal events, and massive weapon variety keeps the game feeling fresh. Even after hundreds of hours, the thrill of discovering a new gun, defeating a challenging boss, or pushing through a punishing arena run never fades. That's the kind of replayability that's kept me hooked for years. Borderlands 3 is a game that knows exactly what it is. A chaotic, absurd, over-the-top looter shooter with a heart buried beneath all the explosions. As a longtime fan, I can honestly say it delivers in so many ways, even if it stumbles occasionally. Borderlands 3 is not perfect. Some story pacing issues, occasional repetitive mission design, and a few minor performance hiccups hold it back from perfection. But as a longtime fan, none of these flaws overshadow the thrill of discovering a new weapon, teaming up with friends, or laughing at the insane dialogue. It's a game that rewards exploration, experimentation, and sheer chaos. It's vibrant, hilarious, and filled with enough Easter eggs, references, and insane guns to keep a fan like me grinning for hundreds of hours. It's a must-play. It may not redefine the series, but it absolutely celebrates everything fans love. Chaos, guns, humor, and heart. The weapons alone are worth diving in for, and the endgame keeps the fun alive long after the credits roll. Borderlands 3 is loud, messy, ridiculous, and brilliant. A chaotic love letter to the series fans. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch. I really do appreciate it. Be sure to let me know down below which Borderlands game is your favorite, or just drop some of your favorite Borderlands memories down below. Again, thanks for watching, and if you feel like it, please subscribe and hit the like button, and be sure to check out oneupgames.com, and until next time, may all of your games be good ones.